Thank you very much for inviting me here and giving me the opportunity to speak. One of the questions I'm often asked is, how did I end up where I am? How did I plan my career? I view my career as being a successful one. I view my life as being a successful one. And when people ask me, how come you're happy? How come you think you're successful? What did you do? How did you plan it? It got me thinking. Actually, Anuradha Sharma, who invited me to attend this, to speak to you today, told me that that was the question that I should answer. So it got me to reflect. And this conversation with you is important to me because in the process of reflection, I came across 3 insights. I'll share those 3 insights with you. I'm hoping that at the end of that conversation with you, we'll all end up with a different view on success, career, and life. But the lessons work for men and women. And while it appears as if I'm talking to youngsters, it applies to people across all ages. I have a friend sitting in the audience who was my role model and mentor as a child. And his name is Veer Sagar. He means a lot to me. He was the first person who inspired me with what a professional can be. And so I hope that even though he has another meeting and has to leave, he'll hear some bits of this that will touch him and maybe give him some lessons that he can impart to his daughters. So the most important thing that I learned by reflection is that people look for something in life. They have some milestones, they have some goals, they plan to be somewhere, they plan to reach something. From my own life journey, my insight is that the attitude that worked well for me, from my own life journey, my insight is that the attitude that worked well for me is to let things discover you. Let life discover you. I admire the fact that youngsters today are very clear about what they want to do and where they want to go. But what worked for me was being open, listening to others, being curious, asking lots of questions, and having a sense of adventure. So when I was 12 years old, my uncle, my Tauji, asked me a very important question. He said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a nurse, or I want to be an air hostess. And he said, why? I said, because, I'm reading about Cherry Ames, who's a nurse, and I'm reading about Shirley Flight, who's an air hostess. He said, but why don't you want to be a doctor? Or why don't you want to be a pilot? And I said, women don't do that. And he said, you can be a pilot or a doctor or anything you want to be. The world is your oyster. People do say these things. But what was different was that I heard him. And at that very young age of 12 years old, his question and my listening created a sense of possibility in me. And that sense of possibility is very important. It did not create an ambition in me to be a pilot or a doctor. I am not neither a pilot nor a doctor. But that sense of perspective, of positive possibility, has determined and guided me in my life. And that's something that is important for everybody, especially for young girls. And that understanding helped me a great deal when I went to IIM, Calcutta. I know you guys are going to ask, how did an English honors person get into IIM, Calcutta? I thought I could do it. So I didn't realize that because I dropped maths and stats in class 8, I wouldn't be able to get in, I wouldn't be able to clear the exam. I thought I could do it. I sat for the exam, I studied hard, I did it. But at IIM Calcutta, I was taken aback. I was the only English honors student in a class of 112. And in case any of you are thinking that it's different, it's not. I just visited IIM Cal. It's my 40th reunion, 40 years. In 40 years, the class size is doubled or tripled or whatever. 600 students. So 6 times. But the number of English honors students is only 3. So nothing has changed. So in that class of 112, there were all engineers, and there were 10 who were maths, science, or economics graduates. I was the only English honors. I would sit in the front row and ask questions. And everybody at the back would say, you ask such basic questions. But because I had an innate sense of curiosity, because I didn't mind asking questions, because I had a love of learning, I got the gold medal. So what I'm really trying to, you can clap. What I'm really trying to say here, I mean, it's nice to be appreciated. But what I'm sharing over here is that openness to letting life discover you, to discovering life, or letting life discover you, letting things find you, and that questions and the art of questioning, the curiosity, the love of learning really helped me. And that is a mindset which I think is an important mindset. That's my first insight. The second insight is that in life, all experiences add value to you. So I've worked as a banker, I've worked in the community, I've been a mother, I've been an administrator, I've led profit centers, I've been a trainer. No regrets. But it's important not to have any silos in your life. And I had silos. See, I worked in a time when there were no women in the workforce. I was the only girl, only woman in a branch of 600 people. There was no loo for women. There was no place to eat. In that environment, I didn't want to be a woman. I tried to downplay the fact that I was female to the extent that I would dress differently, I would wear spectacles, I wouldn't wear makeup, I would wear no jewelry. To the extent that one of my colleagues once met me at theater, and he said, "Oh my God, I didn't recognize it was you. I didn't know it was you." I was like a split personality. I got over that slowly. It wasn't all that easy. That remark by my colleague was the first thing, but I really got over it when I was reporting to the chief executive at Grindlays. By then I was head of HR for Grindlays, for South Asia, a big job. You would have thought that by then I was confident. I was part of the managing committee, the only 32-year-old in a bunch of 55-year-olds. When I used to have an argument with them in the board meetings, they would shout at me using the names of their daughters and their wives. They were so unused to having a woman in the workplace that when there was an argument, they were not able to they dealt with it in their personal role model of being able to browbeat their wives and daughters. So in that environment, I never even put up a photo of my daughter. And in my office, one day, but my male colleagues used to, but I never did it. One day I was sitting in this chief executive's office. He was a big bear of a man, an Australian guy. And I saw like a furry growth on his shoulder. So I said, "My God, what is that?" And I couldn't pay attention to him. And then that furry growth became bigger and bigger, and it was a little face. His little son was on his back, climbing all over his office. I mean, over him. I was in a formal meeting with him. So he must have seen my look of shock. And he said, "It's a Saturday morning. And Saturday mornings my wife has off. It's her morning. And so I have to look after the children." And, I suddenly realized that, he was comfortable with his children. He was comfortable being a father. He was comfortable bringing them to work. What was my issue? So that was the final stage. And before that, I'd done little bits and pieces. I used to run a branch at Grinley's at Breach Candy. And that branch was a place where I brought my hobbies, art and theater and music, my passion for community service, all together, because I would run theater there, I would run music shows there, I would had an art gallery, I partnered to create the Bhulabai Gardens, which is, a really famous place now, the Akbar Ali Gardens. All those things I did as the branch manager there. Jagjit Singh was my customer. He used to come and give me cassettes. I used to play his music. My husband was in advertising. We used to get free magazines. I used to serve coffee and it was a reading room. The place was furnished like a living room. I had the wife of the head of Philips was into bonsai. She was my customer. She used to come and do my flower arrangements. So I didn't spend very much money, but I brought all my hobbies into the branch. But I was still shy about being a mother. That experience with that chief executive changed that view of life for me. And it really made me so fulfilled and so happy that I didn't have to be a different person in different walks of life. I didn't have to pretend. I had no silos, either in my personal life or my professional life. So that was really, really important. Everything you experience when it's integrated, it comes together in a very different way. And in my current job, for example, where I'm leading the Harvard Business School Research Center, I'm able to act as a bridge between the best of our region in South Asia and Harvard, because I'm an integrated person. All my experiences of running a profit center, being a leader, traveling the world, whatever, everything enabled me to do this job really well. So no regrets and no silos, no breaks. In fact, this partnership approach that I developed with a partnership with the shareholders, with the customers, with the community, enabled me to partner with all the different entities of Harvard. We have many here. Harvard Business Publishing, Harvard Global. Harvard Business Publishing is your knowledge partner, I think, for this conference. But in Boston, they're all run as silos. They have a saying, every tub has its own bottom. Nobody cooperates. Here we have something called a One Harvard model. And that's partly because I believe in an integrated approach to life and a partnership approach, not only in my personal life, but in my work and with people I work with. People are not my competitors, my antagonists. I like to collaborate. So that's the second insight, that if you integrate, it works well. And the third most important insight was gifted to me by my mother. As a teenager, between school and college, my mother suggested that I volunteer at Shishu Bhavan, which is actually an orphanage run by the missionaries of charity, started by Mother Teresa. In Calcutta, it's very, very, very special, and now Shishu Bhavan is all over the world. I came from a privileged background. My father was an executive a senior executive in a very big company at Dunlop's, which is where my mentor Veer Sagar is from. And my mother was a school teacher, but because she was a school teacher, we got all our schooling free. So we were able to, go to the best schools. And I had not really seen or understood the disadvantages and the poverty of affection that exists in the world. So what struck me at Shishu Bhavan was not that the children hungered for food, because they did not. They hungered for love. They hungered for a hug, a smile, a joke. It was a hug and a cuddle brought a bigger smile to their face than a chocolate piece. And it taught me what mattered was empathy and compassion. Affection. That what really matters is to be a good human being. And that in the direst circumstances, these children have nothing. They were still examples of bundles of love and joy. That experience also challenged me to see how I can make a difference and what impact I can make. I decided that being a good human being was more important than money, power, or influence. And therefore, making an impact means a great deal to me. As I told you, I started doing that in a small way as the branch manager at Greenlays. I worked on building the coastline of Mumbai, gardens across the coastline of Mumbai. Again, it was because I was open. One of my customers came to me. He used to work for Tata Power. And he said, Anjali, let's do something. We should have gardens all across the coastline. I said, Suresh, you're smoking dope. There's no way we can do it. He said, no, let's try. And, today, if anybody comes to Bombay, you will find that whether it's Otters Park or whether it is Priyadarshini Park or whether it is the Amarsons Park, or there's parks everywhere. And it started, as I used to tell Suresh, I think for every step we take forward, we take 10 steps backwards. But what we started in 1985, many years, but it gives me hope that if you start something, it can go on. And when I was with Citibank, what happened was that there was this 2001 crisis, World Trade Center, etc. What's the first thing to be cut in a global recession? Training. I had no money. So what did I do? I worked with the Bombay Municipal Corporation. I partnered with them to get citizens to work on reducing, reusing, and recycling garbage. At that time, there were the garbage bin, the garbage dumps in Mumbai were full. And today, many years later, in 2004, we worked with all the wards of Mumbai, etc. We created workshops, etc. And at that point of time, it seemed really esoteric and all, but there was a citizens movement which were catalyzed. So all the training and learning and development, the leadership that I had learned, the good relationships I had built in the community, helped me to do this workshop really well. And these workshops well. And the reward for me was that in 2004, when we bought our own home, the view outside was of a rubbish dump. But when we actually moved into it, it was a garden. We could see there were big JCBs and all coming in. That movement that I had catalyzed, one of the things, citizens had taken it up and they were making that rubbish dump into a garden. And we've now been in that home for 17 years. That garden has gone from strength to strength, from being a small patch to having a football ground, a badminton court, a Nana Nani park, a jogging track which is 4 miles long. It's just expanded. So that's my reward. I go there with my granddaughter and my husband. But when I started it in 1985, I never knew, or even in 2000 when I worked with the Bombay Municipal Corporation, I never knew that I would benefit. I just did it because I wanted to make an impact. And in this current job, the reason I joined Harvard Business School and left banking, I was passionate about banking. I love my customers. I still am in touch with them. The reason I left was because one of my Latin American colleagues who was meeting me to persuade me to join, he told me, he said, Anjali, the platform that you will have to make a difference at the business school will be very different from what you can do anywhere else. And it's true. I am in a position, my center is in a position to bring the best of India and South Asia to Harvard through case studies, which showcase the wonderful business models that entrepreneurs like you are creating, the new trends that are emerging in our region, and the fabulous work that you guys are doing to solve the problems. So, for example, Devi Shetty and Narayan Hrudayalaya, that hospital in Bangalore has better outcomes than Mayo. It is the largest pediatric cardiac care hospital in the world. They do more operations in one day than the UK does in the whole year. And why is that? Because we have the population and because Dr. Devi Shetty has a fabulous model. Nobody knew about it until we wrote about it. Then we have Amul. Many of you drink the milk, eat the cheese, etc. They are the largest dairy. They give Nestle a run for their money. And their model is unique because they give value to their customers and value to the producers. Who gives value to producers? You either give value to customers and squeeze the producer, or you give value to the producer and squeeze the customer. This model gives value to both. It's a cooperative model. And they have succeeded where nobody else has managed to. And nobody knew about it. We work on terror at the, the Taj crisis that occurred when so many people in Bombay lost their lives in the hotels because of the incident. We wrote about that. Nobody understood what customer centricity was. we wrote, let's go to something nicer. What about, all of us wear these earpods and all that. BOAT, B-O-A-T, is started by young entrepreneurs, 2 young men. I wish it was a woman. Who, they've become the 3rd largest wearables company in the world in 5 years. So you feel proud about these companies and you can write about them and share these stories with the leaders. Why it's important is because not only do the MBA students at Harvard study these case studies, but these case studies are sold around the world to business schools around the world. 90% of cases that are taught in business schools around the world and in undergraduate schools are created by Harvard. And these are also taught to executives like you and me who go to these executive education programs. So they read about these models, they read about these new ways of doing business, which create a different context entirely for what is possible. So that impact, I want to really acknowledge my mother for, because opening my mind and opening my heart to the fact that life is more than money, power, and influence was done by her. And she's here in the room just now. If you look at her, she can stand up or she can wave. Come on, give her a big hand. She's an example to all of us. She's 88 years old and still teaching every day. To persuade her to come for this conference, we had to say, please don't teach today, come now. And she makes money as well while she's teaching. So it's not for free. So she's a mini entrepreneur. So that brings me almost to the end of what I had to say. I started off with success, career, life. What are the skills that you need to build? People talk about skills. Why should I do this? Should I go here? In the end, I say that if you're willing to learn, if you're willing to invest in yourself, reinvent yourself continuously, if you have the right character, all these things work out. When I was young, 7 to 8 years old, living in the same compound as Veer Sagar, we didn't even have a phone. We had a black instrument. And when you picked up the phone, there would be an operator on the other side. And that lady would say, whom do you want to speak to? And then she would connect you. We didn't have, music. Music player came to us maybe 5-6 years when I was 12, 13 years older. We got a music player. There was no question of having a TV. Now you have music on your phone. You're carrying it. You have all the collections. Why I'm telling you all this? Not because I'm so old. But what I'm really saying is that how can you at the beginning of your life know what the world will be like at the end of your life? You can build your character. You can build your compassion. You can build in yourself a desire for learning, a desire to create an impact. You can be the same person in every facet of life. And the ability to constantly reinvent yourself, to look at the context around you, seize the opportunity to make a difference is what's really important. As entrepreneurs, you have that opportunity to see where the world has a problem, where society has a problem, and to invent or find a solution. That's what entrepreneurs do. People say they want power, they want influence, they want wealth. The truth is that if you try and solve a problem, you are likely to get power, wealth, and influence. But if you chase power, wealth, and influence, you may get only one, not the other, or you may not get it, you'll be unhappy, or even if you get it, you may find that it's hollow. So I'm going to end with a poem. I told you I'm English honors and, I love language. So if you'll excuse me, you might enjoy it as well. It's by my favorite philosopher. His name is Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it says, the poem is titled, To Have Succeeded. To laugh often and love much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the approbation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to give oneself, to leave the world a little better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or redeemed social condition, to have played and laughed with enthusiasm and sung with exaltation, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. So that brings me to the end of what I had to say. I hope I've given you a different perspective on life, love, careers, and success.